Reef Tunes is sponsored by Brightwell Aquatics and Bulk Reef Supply.
When you first get into the reefing hobby, there's a lot of lingo and acronyms for all types of stuff, and you're probably gonna have no idea what the heck anyone's talking about. So I figured it'd be fun to do a bit of a video going over all the common acronyms. What's going on, guys? Devin from Reef Dudes. Now today we are digging into some reef terminology and clarify and get you guys up to speed with some of that reef lingo. Acros, or Acropora, are SPS, which stands for small polyp stony coral. They're branching corals that can provide a lot of color and different structures in your reef tank. AIO stands for all-in-one. Generally, on an all-in-one tank, you would have a rear chamber, which filters a little tiny filtration compartment, and it means everything is within your tank. There is no sump, and is all self-contained, so generally happens only on smaller tanks, but all-in-one's a nice simple way to get started. Scape or AQUASCAPE refers to your layout of rocks and kind of how you set it out and do the structures inside of your tank.
ATO or automatic top off. So as water evaporates, the salt stays with the fresh water evaporates, which in turn raises your salinity. So having ATO will replace fresh water back in your tank to keep your salinity stable. ATS, algae turf scrubber. Now this is a device where there's a waterfall that goes over top of the screen. We got LEDs on both sides of it, and this grows what's called turf algae. Now turf algae is going to suck out your ammonia, your nitrates, your phosphates, and help keep your water nice and clean. It's also a nice way to kind of contain everything and keep your sump looking nice and clean. AWC or auto water change stands for automating a water change process. So generally you have two pumps. One will suck water out of the tank, one will add it back in from a new freshwater source, and it automates your water changes for you. AMINO stands for amino acids, and this is kind of a basic building block and something that a lot of people dose to their tank to help increase coloration and coral health. CARX is usually abbreviated for calcium reactor, and this is a method of dosing nutrients to your coral. CO2, or carbon monoxide, is generally used with calcium reactors. This is injected into chambers that in turn lower the pH, and that acidicness will melt old coral skeletons and drips it back into the tank to feed your new corals. CUC or cleanup crew. These are all the little critters in your tank like snails and crabs that help clean up all the detritus and keep your tank clean.
Doser or dosing pump. This is a pump that will take a fluid from a container and move it to your tank for you, so it can automate adding supplements to your tank. Another term you might hear quite a bit is FOWLR or FOWLR, which means fish only with live rock. It's basically a tank with fish, rock, but no coral. FRAGS, our favorite. So FRAGS are just little chunks of coral that people break off and either propagate, sell, or trade with their friends. FUGE or REFUGIUM is a place generally for macroalgae to grow. We grow different algae that will export nutrients from our tank, so help reduce our nitrate and phosphates. And refugiums are generally lit with a higher power LED light. And as it grows the algae, it absorbs those nutrients and exports it from your tank. GFCI, ground fault interrupt. Now these are plugs that have a little tiny breaker inside. Detects any water or a short, it's going to pop that and shut it off. It's a good safety feature, something good to have on your tanks. GFO or granular ferric oxide. This is a media that's used to remove phosphates from your water, or PO4. Gonis or Goniopora. Really cool little corals. That's a fleshy movement. Lots of really cool colors swaying in the current. There's also a similar one called Alveopora, which is similar, but they have a different number of little polyps on each tentacle. Gorg is another term you may hear, and it stands for Gorgonian. And these guys are really cool little filter feeders. They're kind of a branching coral. Now this guy actually had a little crab on there. I don't know how he got up there. Now though these guys are photosynthetic, there is also non-photosynthetic type, and those are called NPS, or non-photosynthetic. Those guys do not rely on light, and you definitely have to feed them. GSP or green star polyps. So super easy coral, has a nice bright color and movement to your tank. H2O2 or hydrogen peroxide. This is a great tool for dipping stuff like ZOA'S and not overly sensitive corals. Usually put it in and it's going to kill the algae off your plug. If you give it a dip with straight hydrogen peroxide, 3%, 60 to 90 seconds max. You can also turn off the flow in your tank and spot treat problem spots, and it will help kill that algae. So great stuff. 1 ml per 10 gallons max, should be good to go. KALK, which is short for KALKWASSER, which is calcium hydroxide. This can be used to raise your pH and do a bunch of your dosing supplementation in your tank. GHA, green hair algae. Now if you're having a conversation with somebody, there is another few kind of common ones that pop up, like IDK, I don't know, IME, in my opinion, IMHO, in my honest opinion, LMK, let me know, and those are a bunch more just conversational ones. LPS stands for large polyp stony coral, and it's basically corals that have a skeleton but they have very large polyps on it. Now we also have O2, which is oxygen, just what we breathe, and there's another one called O3, which stands for ozone, and that's another way you can use to kind of clarify your water. PAR stands for photosynthetically active radiation. It's used to measure light, so this is going to be how much energy the light is putting out at a specific time. And this is what most reefers use to kind of compare how much light a coral can handle or is currently receiving. Now, if we're talking about PAR, the other side of the spectrum is DLI, which is daylight integral, which is basically PAR over duration, which kind of gives the full picture of how much light energy a coral is receiving in a given day. Plate generally stands for plate coral or fungias. Super easy corals. They generally stay on the sand bed. Little tentacles come out, and you can kind of, if you feed them, you'll see little tentacles bring food to the mouth. Super cool corals. RADION. So these are XR15s. They are Ecoteca radions, which is a very popular light in the aquarium trade, and you hear this one used a lot. So radions are one of the higher end lights of the trade. Reactor. So a reactor is basically a device that forces water through it. So we've got a chamber. In this case, mine is fed off my return pump. Goes into the reactor. I have carbon and GFO inside of here. It forces it to go all the way through that media and back into the tank. So it's basically a more efficient way of having media process your water. RFA, or rock flower anemone. These are super easy anemones. They're really pretty, like little underwater flowers, and for the most part, they will stay put. They can definitely move around, but if they have a nice spot to plant their foot, they will stay in place and create a really pretty little island.
STN, slow tissue narcosis. This is when a coral the flesh starts to die off, and you'll start to see it slowly turning white over a few days. Now, on the flip side, there's also RTN, which stands for rapid tissue narcosis. And this is when that whole process usually happens within a day or so, where the whole coral will just turn white and die off. So usually it's caused from some kind of bacteria or some other imbalance or swing or stress factor in the tank. That's a little bit of a mystery. I don't know if we have a 100% answer, but that's what STN and RTN stand for.
SQUAMMY is usually what they call a squamosa clam. So this big guy right here, you can kind of see the little flutes on the side of it, and that's a key way to tell a squamosa clam. But SQUAMMY is very common terminology for them.
Skimmer, or protein skimmer. This is a device that basically mixes air with water and creates foam. It's also called a foam fractionator. All these bubbles basically collect, they come up to the top, they pop, and they end up in the cup, and this is how you remove a lot of those dissolved organics out of your water. Sump. This is the place where you hide all of your gear. If you have a reef-ready tank with drains and overflow, all your gear kind of gets hidden in the sump below, so it keeps your display tank looking nice and clean.
Next, we have our test kits. So when you're starting a first tank, you're going to be testing ammonia, which is NH3, and after that, it's going to convert to nitrite, which is NO2, and then to NO3, which is nitrate. And once you've got nitrates, your tank is cycled, and the next thing you want to do is you want to test all your major parameters. So we have KH, which is your alkalinity, so it also abbreviates for ALGAE, so alkalinity. We have calcium, which is usually Ca for calcium, and magnesium, Mg or mag for magnesium. The other one that you'd want to care about is PO4, which stands for phosphates. Torches. One of my favorite are torch corals. They're a type of Euphyllia and provide a lot of different color and movement to your tank. Super duper cool corals.
UV stands for ultraviolet. Now this is a form of disinfection in a reef tank. Water flows through it, and you can either use it to combat algae or you can use it to combat fish parasites depending on the flow through it.
VORTECH, a type of pump that's magnetically coupled through the glass. They come in 3 different sizes. There's the MP10, MP40, and these are the big boys, the MP60. Really cool way to keep the power out of your tank and really easy to maintain. So VORTECHs are fairly popular, so you're probably going to hear that terminology once in a while.
WB usually people say for like a water box tank. Another one you'll see quite a bit is saying like Starfire or low iron, and what that refers to is high clarity glass. So it's basically more optically clear and you don't have that big green tinge that you get in normal glass.
ZOA'S, or zoanthids are these little tiny guys. They kind of look like little flowers. Super easy coral for starting out and can provide a lot of color to your tank.
When I first started the hobby, there was a bazillion different acronyms and things I saw people saying, and I had no idea what the heck they meant, so I was Googling a bazillion different things. So I figured it'd be kind of fun to make a quick video of all the random ones that kind of came to mind to hopefully help out some new reefers. So if this helped you out, you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Now I'm sure there's a bazillion ones I missed, and if you have any good ones, drop them in the comments below. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next update.